Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Mark Papadas. Hey, Mark.
Hey, how are you?
Good. So excited to have you on, and we're going to talk about kids and how to empower kids. So, very excited about that. But before we start, I'm going to go ahead and just read your bio so people have an idea who you are.
Okay.
So, Mark Papadas is a transformative force in the world of youth empowerment, an award winning speaker, and a visionary behind I Am for Kids, driven by a mission to revolutionize elementary education and youth entertainment in the U.S. Mark infuses his groundbreaking programs with years of expertise in self empowerment and success building. All right. So, Mark, I'm really excited, like I said before we got on, about talking about this because I think the kid time is the most important imprinting time. In fact, when I had my private practice, I specialize in pediatrics for that same reason. It's like we need to take care of them and make sure they're on the right track when they're little. So,
Uh,
tell me about you and how you started and got into this.
Well, in terms of how I got started in this, I guess there's two parts of the answer to that. So, number one is I was born with a gift of just being able to connect with kids. I think they just realize I'm just a much bigger version of them, kind of thing. But I learned to just basically embrace and accept it. So, and I'm also a glutton for personal development. So I can't tell you the last time I read a novel, but I'm always, reading, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, either as a way of improving myself or to find something that I can then pass through and bring on to the kids. And it's funny how you mentioned in terms of there is in my opinion, a cool origin story about how I Am for Kids came about. So I had been working with so-called adults for over a decade as a sales trainer and personal development coach. And I had an epiphany late in 2009 where I have three children who are now grown, but one of them at the time was playing youth football. After the season was over, a bunch of the coaches were all together at a local establishment, just having a couple beers, a little camaraderie kind of thing. And then one of my son's coaches came over and just started going off on this positive rant about my son, saying about how he was a great kid he was, he's a natural leader, going on and on. And then I did something that we all do, but nobody ever admits, where I mentally checked out of the conversation. Because in my head, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if every parent could have these types of conversations about their kids? It's like, what could I do about that? And then I realized he was still talking, so I can, I shook it off and I re-engaged in the conversation. But I know that that was the ignition for what happened later that evening. I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm getting goosebumps just kind of thinking back to that night where I was in bed and I was in that stage of sleep before you hit REM when literally like a lightning bolt just boom, just it's like, hey, dummy, you know this stuff already. Why don't you take what you're doing with adults, bring it to the point in a person's life where to actually do the most good? All you have to do is come up with a format that do it in a way that would be engaging and entertaining for the kids. And then literally, it was almost like a religious experience kind of thing. It just started to download into me. And unlike those times when we've had great ideas when we're in bed and it's like, yeah, I'll write that down in the morning. And you wake up in the morning and it's like, oh, I remember I had a great idea, but what was it? Right. I wasn't making that mistake. I got up, I went downstairs, got out a legal pad and just started writing. And I was down there for several, let's put it this way, I never did get to sleep because my now ex-wife, she came down the next morning kind of like, what are you doing? I'm like, shh, it's not done yet. And that was about 80% of what I Am for Kids is today came from that night.
Wow, that's amazing. Definitely from above.
So yeah, there's definitely a higher power involved, and that's the night that I realized basically why I was put on the earth and why I had experienced all of the different things, good and bad, why I learned all the things was to put me in that spot so that I could create that and then go out and take that out to the world. And I literally shut down my sales training business that night. I mean, I fulfilled the contracts that I had, but I was like, the rest of my life I'm devoting to doing this.
Wow. And I've talked to other people when they have that pivot and, that's a big jump to just like quit your business, like, because income stops when you quit your business. So you just quit your business and you're going to start something new. So a lot of people are always asking, well, how did you do it? How did you go out? Like, how did you go out and find your first clients and sell your idea and actually get money for it?
Well, to a certain extent, I think I was fortunate in that I really wasn't changing what I was doing. I was just changing who I was doing it with. So, like I said, I had contracts that I still had to fulfill. So I still had some revenue coming in. It wasn't like I just, took an axe and just chopped it right there. But I think the benefit that I had was that what I do is basically universally accepted as a good thing. So part of what was the download was, who can I get to help? Who's going to want to pay for this? So when I started what was then a nonprofit so that we could give the program to the schools, we went out. It's like, what corporation wouldn't want to say that they sponsored putting I Am for Kids in the local elementary school, right? Where the school didn't have to pay for it because we all know schools don't have money to do much of anything, right? So it was all, let's say, part of that divine intervention, if you will, of how it was all going to work together. And I just basically followed the plan.
All right. So you just got corporations to um, sponsor sponsor your program, and then you went into the schools and just talked to them and said, "Hey, I have this program."
Basically, I really did it more in reverse in terms of I took it to the schools first and just said, all you have to do is say that you want it. We'll go out and find the sponsors to pay for it. So basically, we showed them that there was a built-in audience that was already hungry for the program. And part of the brilliance of the design was I didn't want it to be I didn't want a limiting factor of how many kids we could reach, be how many places I could go in a day, or how many people I could train to go someplace in a day. So that's why we did it where it's all media based. It's me interacting with these 5 animated characters who are all based on real kids. And I take them through the identity building process. And the kids, certain characters answer the way we know certain percentages of the kids in the classroom are thinking and feeling. So now they feel that it's a safe space, that they're not weird for thinking that they're less than or something like that, right? So basically, so yeah, so we got to the schools first, then went out, took it to the sponsors, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks for answering that. Because so many people, especially when they're starting out something new, they're thinking, well, how did he do it? How did he just start that new and go out and get clients? That's the number one thing of people looking like, how do I get clients? So you made sure that the schools really wanted what you had, and then you went to the corporations, which makes
Yes, and I think my background as a sales trainer helps a little bit as well in terms of knowing how to position things, how to present them in a way where if somebody didn't have that background, they might go in and be like, what do I do now? Oh, they said yes. Oh, okay. Now what? Kind of thing.
That does help to have sales because we're always selling, as they say, we're always
Yep.
selling, right? Even if
Yep.
we're selling the movie we want to go to tonight, we're always selling. So so then you started this program. So I'm guessing at first you just started it solo yourself, or how did you do that? Or did you train
Uh,
people right away?
so for the most part, I guess you say I was always leading the charge. The in terms of but I also know that no, I mean, no good vision, no project can ever go far, at least on one person's back, right? I think there's an old saying is if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go as a team. So I built out a really good team of people who are way smarter than me, especially in the areas of what they do, and just let me be the person who was pushing out the program and let them handle the stuff behind the scenes, if you will. So is that what you were asking in terms of how I was able
Yeah.
to sustain things?
Right. And
Yeah.
then going out to the schools, were you the only one going out to the schools, or did you have a team of people going out to the different schools?
What I found was it was very, I don't even want to say referral based, because usually referrals, it's like, hey, who do you know who could do this? What wound up happening was when, we'd go to a school and they'd say, "Wow, this is incredible. Yeah, we want this." And I'm going to call my friends who are principals over at this school, and this school. So they were just they basically became our evangelists, if you will, and just kept spreading the word. And then put on top of that what we were doing on our own, trying to get things out where, because at the time when we first started, the social media was nowhere near what it is today, but we were trying to use that to get the word out as well, and having fundraisers, that kind of stuff.
Mhm. Beautiful. So, what does the program entail? You said a little bit about, characters and things like that, but is this like a stage type thing where you're talking to them, or what does it look like?
No, so kind of going back to those limiting factors that we tried to eliminate was it's all, like I said, it's media based. So at the time, because streaming wasn't what it is now, et cetera, school would let us know how many second through fifth grade classrooms they had, approximately how many students that they had. Also, because of my book, which is designed for the educators and the parents, we would also send a copy of my book in either English or Spanish for every household as well. Okay. So it's designed to sit on top of the curriculum taught in second through fifth grade. So there were schools who implemented the program who I never set foot in. We offered to come in and be able to speak, but then again, you have to find assembly time and all that kind of stuff, and all the kids could be there. So basically there was a DVD that is me interacting with the five characters, and there'd be a short section, and then they would pause a DVD. It comes with a complete lesson guide. So it was designed so that it could be effective with a highly qualified teacher, or maybe even a teenager at a sleepaway camp on a rainy afternoon kind of thing where they had to find something to do to fill up the time. So if they can read, they can conduct the program. So we know that kids are going to be asking certain questions, and we outline those. And the whole idea behind this is not to teach a kid what to think, but how to think. So if they ask you these questions, here's the questions you should ask in response to get them to come up with the answers. And the core of what the school program is all about is developing that empowering identity. In other words, how do they finish the statement, I am dot, dot, dot.
Mm.
Because to me, that's the most important thing that any of us have. The only problem is most of us, doesn't matter whether you're a kid or an adult, have never given it conscious thought. Okay. So for example, the five-step process is the same whether you're an adult or a kid. It's just how it's taught is where it's completely different. And step one is to write it. So in other words, they're same way adults or kids, they're given a blank sheet of paper that just says I am on the top of it. So go ahead and finish that thought. And immediately, once again, kids or adults, hands go up. It's like, how do you want me to answer this? What are you looking for? It's like, there's no right or wrong answer. Whatever you feel inside, whatever you think is right, go ahead and write that down. Over 80% of the time with adults, they answered with either their name and or their occupation, right? Really, which has nothing to do with who you are, the standards you hold yourself to, your core belief system, your moral code, any of that kind of stuff, right? It's a label you were given by your parents when you were born, and what you do to make a living. Now, kids, one thing that didn't surprise us was almost every kid answered with a one-word answer, because that's how kids answer questions, right? It's like, how was school today? Good. Right? That's a kid, right? But the scary part was in the pilot classrooms that over 50% of the kids answered with a one-word answer that was a negative trait or characteristic, with the most common ones being I am fat, I am stupid, or I am ugly.
Oh.
Okay. So, like there's a quote that I use that says that I consider kids to be like wet cement. Okay. And that anything that falls on them leaves an impression. So if they haven't decided for themselves who they are, basically the loudest voices in their orbit are what is going to make those impressions. So that's why we wanted to get to kids, like you had mentioned in the opening, is we want to get to them as soon as possible, so that, to use a construction term, so that that wet cement can cure and harden, so that any of those things that want to come and make an impression, they're just going to bounce off.
Mhm. Beautiful. So the first step is you ask them, "Who are you?" And they say, "I am," and whatever their answer is.
Right.
And then what are the next steps? How do you take them through this?
So that, and again, this is me taking the characters through. So that the next step is to revise and improve it, saying that just because this is what you wrote down, you're not stuck with that, right? There's nothing that's going to keep you in that. So be creative, right? And I cover this in the book once again with the educators and with the parents of that. Not not every child. Matter of fact, there's certain areas in the country where there are really no good role models for them to take as a whole, right? But what I teach them is that they can take different bits and pieces from different people. That I'm sure that the worst person that you know, you could probably find some character trait that you could say is admirable, right? The person never gives up, or that person is steadfast, or whatever it happens to be. So you can ignore the 99% of that person that's just a horrible human being, right? Treats people badly, etc. But this one piece, okay, I can take that and I can incorporate that in, right? So the next step is to revise and improve it.
So they're deciding who they want to be.
Right. And again, it shows that because your identity is going to change from the time that you're 8 till the time that you're 68, right? But the beautiful thing about this is that you get to decide that, and you can change it anytime that you want. And basically, as long as you're not going from being a well, the hardest thing in psychology to do is to act in a way that is contrary to your core beliefs.
Mhm.
So that's why it's so important to get to them when they're young, so that those core beliefs truly are those positive core beliefs in themselves, in basically providing value to the world and being rewarded as such.
Mhm. So would part of the program be teaching them positive affirmations, or, what do they leave with? So you're taking them through these steps, but I guess what's the follow-up, or what do they leave with? How do you know you're making an impact when you're
So
doing these classes with them?
So part of it is the repetition, because again, it's not a one and done kind of thing. So part of the what the schools commit to in the lesson plan is that repetitious part of it. So once they get done once they develop their identity, it's not a basically for the next 3 weeks to a month, we
Mhm.
want them to, every time they enter the classroom, the first thing that they're going to do, and everybody in the class out loud, is they're going to read their identity. So it's not like reading class where one person reads it and then the rest, they all just do it. So for a very brief period of time, it's just a loud mess in that classroom because everybody's reading it. But what that does is that then associates being in the classroom with feeling better about themselves. So when they get there first thing in the morning, they read their identity. And then it goes back in the desk. Uh,
Mhm.
some schools have recess, some don't. But if you have recess in the morning, you come back into the classroom, you read your identity. Come back from lunch, read the identity. Come back from gym class, you read the identity. Before you leave for the day, you read the identity. So it just becomes, just it drives it home.
Mhm.
Okay. So the after that, you can do it a little bit less frequently, but the key is during that first 3 to 4 weeks is that repetition, so that literally does use the mind-body connection to get that going.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then we've seen, for privacy reasons, they can't give us like test scores, but they can give us cumulative stuff about in class grades, and that close to 50% of the kids in class grades increased. So C students moved up to B, et cetera. But the biggest thing that I wouldn't say so much surprised by, but we were surprised by the percentage, is that by over 60%, disciplinary actions went down, because once again, there was two things about it. That one was a best practice that I actually learned from one of the teachers, was that when they started to act in a way that wasn't congruent with who they said, that all they had to do was remind the kid, is just like, are you living up to your identity? And they would be like, no, I guess I'm not. Okay. And then kind of bring them back into that state. So those are the results that we've seen.
Mhm. And I'm imagining working with kids in that age group. I mean, did some of them say I'm Superman or Wonder Woman, or did they just say like I'm kind, or what are some of the things, one of the identities that they choose at that age to be?
You'd be surprised, because so one of the things that we talk about in the program is that you don't have to be limited to one word answers, right? So uh, the follow up that I teach when I do it myself and I teach them is, so if somebody does say that they're Superman, so okay, so what does that mean? And then they're basically forced to get down to those distinctions and differences, because that's really where the magic is. Because a lot of times, people will say, like, well, I'm great. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? Because one person's great might be another person's fantastic, right? So you have to, be more specific, be even more specific. I keep asking the questions to drill down. And once you get to those distinctions, that's when I said, when the real magic happens, but that's when the true feelings of whether it's, again, a kid or an adult, that's when the true feelings come out.
Got it. So a kid might come in and say, I'm kind, loving, and determined, or whatever they're saying when they're walking in the classroom. So not necessarily one word, but even a string of words just describing them.
Yeah. And if we have time at the end, like I have my identity. I actually keep it on the wall in my office, and I read it just like I read it every morning. So if you have time at the end, maybe I'll get up from my chair and I'll bring it down and I'll read it, because that's where a lot of times when they hear that, especially on the adult side, they're like, okay, I get it.
Hmm. Yeah. And, and you teach them that it's okay to change your identity as needed, right? So
Mhm. Yep.
if that identity isn't serving them when they get to high school or older, they could always change that identity of who they want to be.
Exactly, and one of the most obvious things is, what second grader is thinking about, getting married, kind of things, right? So as when you get to that level, you have to start thinking of, basically, am I the type of person who will attract the type of person that I want to be with,
Hmm.
right? And again, not so much that you change who you are, but then that also does, it says like, okay, I know who I am, and this is the identity that I'm looking for in somebody that I want to pair up with, right? So now what that does is it gives you a clearer picture of what you're looking for, not just the first person that winks at you or shows you some affection is who you're all of a sudden just going to be like, oh, okay, because you hear all the stories that males or females who literally change who they are just to be with another person, but then are they being true to themselves? What kind of relationship do those people wind up having? Usually those types of relationships don't work out.
Got it. So after your initial program, when it's integrated into the classroom, do you have follow-up programs, or is it all just your initial ones that you're doing and just leave it from stop at that?
So that brings us to where we are today.
Okay.
So basically, all of this stuff was stuff that we started back then. We got it into school starting around 2014, 15 or so. So where we are now is we are launching the I Am for Kids brand. So uh, for your audience, if you have to describe what I Am for Kids is all about, like I say, we bring personal development to kids. So I'd say, just imagine Tony Robbins meets Charlie Brown. Okay. So the what our mission is at I Am for Kids is we want to do for kids empowerment and kids personal development what the Muppets did for reading and for math. So we're basically stealing their business model. So we're in the process of launching. So in January of 25, so basically Q1, 3 months or so, we are going to be launching online kids and family coaching programs. So the basic one is what we call the I Am for Kids Family Pack, where I will be taking kids and families on our website through the identity building program. So, because to me, that's the foundation. That's what everything else builds off of. And again, it's not just designed for the kids. We want the parents to be there because kids are way smarter than most adults give them credit for. And if a kid's going through this and the parents are like, yeah, that's great. We want you to do, and well, okay, mommy, like, what's your identity?
That's right.
Right. They're going to think that you're full of it. Right. So you should have the answers, which is why, again, we sent my book, which is designed for them so that they could actually have those answers and go through that with the kids. So that's what that's all about. But then we're also going to be doing, like masterminds. So that's what the Aim for Kids Roundtable that we're going to be doing. So we're going to be bringing families together where we're all sharing. Because I said, I don't claim to know everything. I'm really good at what I do, but there's best practices that we can learn from each other and network with each other and help each other. And then the I Am for Kids Academy is really what I think the long-term future is for the company. And it's I Am for Kids Academy is all of the things that adults say, why didn't they teach us this in school?
Mm-hmm.
And all of the things that, like, one of the things that I'm still just baffled by is that we're going to be also teaching some soft skills. So in addition to communications and things of that nature, but we're going to teach speed reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I still to this day don't understand why school districts are against speed reading. It's like, why wouldn't you want your students to be able to read faster and comprehend more?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make much sense to me, right? Memory training. Again, that's one of those things where I've actually been told by educators that they are against memory training because that's not learning, that's just rote memorization. I said, but there's things like formulas, equations that it doesn't, you learn by applying the equations, not by having to look them up every time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that if you can have that, if you can remember all of your classmates' names, right? If you can remember all these different things, it just makes your life easier because you don't have to relearn them every time. So those are the types of things, let's say with communication, uh, how money really works, financial literacy, all those different things are going to be part of the I'm for Kids Academy. And we see it that maybe 3 to 5 years from now, where people will want to open up their own brick and mortar I Am for Kids academies in their communities. So we can actually get deeper into the communities as well that way.
Exactly. When you're talking about communication, there's a big buzzword in corporations and business areas now is emotional intelligence. So they're talking about emotional intelligence all the time. It's like, if you're teaching communication at this level, you're teaching that emotional intelligence. So
Yep.
hopefully when they get into the workplace, they can actually get along with their coworkers and work together as a team instead of being so competitive.
What a concept, huh?
Yeah, what a concept. Exactly. And and I'm not going to get into this because I have a little bit, how you have something that really bothers you. So I'm not going to start going off on this, but
Yeah.
I think that the public schools in general need a revamp because we are no longer in the industrial revolutionary
No.
time. We're in the tech time and things are moving fast and people need to know how to use money. They need to know how to take in information rapidly because the information is coming at us faster than we can even
Right.
comprehend it. So to be able to speed read something and at least say, okay, this is information I need, or no, this is not, instead of reading the whole book and getting to the end and realizing,
Right.
didn't help me at all. So those are amazing skills that you guys are teaching.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, the way we see it is that we're investing in our next generation of leaders and entrepreneurs, because that was one of the things that, again, I wouldn't say so much surprised that there was a percentage of, but the high percentage of kids that are just naturally entrepreneurial. So to give you an example, like so the fifth stage, the fifth part of the process is to live it. In other words, to go out and be the person that you've decided who you are, right? And the only the homework, if you will, and this is lifelong homework, is you have to come up with a project that embodies the person that you've decided you are. And the only limitation that we put on the project is that it has to benefit somebody other than just yourself. So you can benefit, but somebody else has to as well.
Mhm.
And in case you haven't figured it out, I Am for Kids is my I Am project, right? But the kids, because usually at that age, they want usually it's a thing, right? It might be a bike, it could be whatever it is. So if it has to benefit somebody other than them, they usually come up with something that's like, okay, well, I could do this for this person, right? There's a bunch of kids who started mowing lawns in the neighborhood kind of thing. But part of that was it's like, okay, so that's still just you benefiting that, people can go out and mow their own lawns. And so we got them to say that, figure out that like, okay, well, there's this elderly couple down at the corner. I can do theirs for free. And I was like, now you're starting to get it. Okay. One of my favorite ones was one that we had to let her know that she couldn't actually do, but let's kind of think bigger, right? Let's get on to a different one. Was she she loved doing in her neighborhood lemonade stands, but she wouldn't just do standard lemonade. It wasn't just some country time in a pitcher. She would come up with these different concoctions of like lemonade and strawberry and grape and lime and all these different things. And she's like, we could do an online lemonade stand. And somebody could give me their orders and I could take them and I could put them in some Ziploc bags and we could mail them to them. I was like, well, we really can't mail powder in a packet through the mail, but let's address that. We'll find it. We can find a way around that kind of stuff. But I said that they're so naturally entrepreneurial that I think it's the they get the imagination kind of beaten out of them, like you were talking about in a lot of the schools. It's like, no, don't think too creatively. Just stay in your lane, stay in your rut, kind of thing. And that's where I think that if we can get to them and let, not let them succumb to that, that in a very short period of time, that our society would be a completely different place to be.
Well, for sure. And, talking about understanding money, I mean, I wasn't taught how to read a balance sheet when I was in high school. I wasn't taught how to assess a company to see if I want to buy it. I wasn't even taught how to assess how to buy a house or how to buy a car. Or, when I first came out of college and realized, oh man, all these utility bills are coming to my house. How did that happen? And all of a sudden you get the realization there's rent and there's utilities and there's insurance and there's, you know, and I wasn't taught any of that in school.
Mhm. No, and nobody is. And that's the part where, I think somebody said to me recently that for the most part, schools are there to generate employees. And I couldn't argue with them. I like to think and hope that that's not really the case. But like I said, I couldn't argue with him. And then if you want to talk about things coming full circle, I was listening when I was working out today. I was listening to on Spotify where it was recommending songs, or just popping them into my playlist. And there's something it's weird because I haven't been following this, but all of a sudden two or three songs popped in, and it's talking about the Stoic mindset, and that's really about really only worrying about things that you can control. So that makes complete sense to me. But what I heard today in one of them that really disturbed me was talking about the original Stoics were along the lines of this all the world is a stage, right? And that people basically need to accept the role that they were given. And I literally just stopped my workout. I was just like, no. you know, you may be in that role now, but if you work hard enough and you study and you do the things necessary, there's no reason why you can't move up into the lead actor or lead actress or the producer or the director role. You don't have to just settle because this is where you are now. I was like, no, 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 no. So I immediately just fast forwarded that. It's like, just get that out of my space.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. And a lot of people feel that way though, because they've been told that over and over
Right.
again. So, to your academy and your programs are teaching them. That's what I love about it the most. They're teaching them they get to choose. You get to choose, and you get to choose every day. They could
Yeah.
change their identity every day if they really wanted to. They could say, well, I was that yesterday, but when I did that, someone took advantage of me. So I think today I will be kind, but I will be tough.
Yeah.
I will be both, you know. Um, but you can choose every day how you want to be as you grow and as you learn. And like you said, as you mature and someone getting married, they're obviously thinking something different than someone who's 6 years old or 5 years old or young kid.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's funny you should mention about, the especially about deciding, right? So I may be oversharing. So if I am, apologize, just stop me. But so when I was in my early 20s, I had two romantic relationships in a row that decided to go back to what were abusive relationships. And I am the type of that I put my woman on a pedestal, right? So it's like I don't get, like maybe being a jerk is the way to go. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna do that. I tried that for like a week or two, and it didn't fly. It just I couldn't pull it off. And the funniest story around that was at the time I didn't have my own car, and I used to have to take the bus to work. And the one bus stop wasn't so much in a bad area, but it wasn't a high end area either. So it was wintertime, kind of bundled up. I was cool. I had a Walkman at the time, right? So I got my earphones in and I was just trying to be all badass so that nobody would mess with me. This little old lady comes up and starts up a conversation with me. I was like, I can't even intimidate a little old lady. It's like, so and this is before I had learned about like the energy that we all put out. And now I understand that yeah, I was just putting out safe energy. She was like, so literally that was a day I just embraced. It's like, you know what? Just be you. Just go with it, dude.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm guessing you did get married because you said you have children.
Yes.
So, um, so how did that go being your identities? How did you like meet your wife and how did that change? How was it different than the two relationships you talked about where it was abusive?
Uh, well, I think she was a little smarter than them. And that because, well, oddly enough, she had just recently gotten out of an abusive relationship. And at the time, she was not looking for anybody. My probably number one character trait is persistence, right? I used to make a joke. She's stubborn. I'm persistent. So it was the third time that I asked her out that she finally agreed to go on a date with me. But then, and then I immediately I would probably go as far as to say scared when a few months into the relationship, he was calling her on a regular basis. I'm like, here we go again. But she had basically hardened herself and she's like, nope, nope, that's done. Never, ever. Um, so in terms of, the identity, when it came time, especially when we started having kids, I was always I would usually rather play with the kids than hang out with the adults. And the little kids would always be jumping on me and all that kind of stuff. And I can't tell you how many times where like I would just kind of happen to look over and you could see all the moms just kind of being like, oh,
Oh.
kind of thing, And the dads were impervious. They were just, they were out playing bags and having beer and stuff like that. So, um, so I taught this stuff to my kids. That was part of, I think, what was part of that epiphany was I was teaching them this when they were in the womb, right? I was talking to them and going through the whole, be great side of it. And I know the impact that it had on them. And I think that was part of those stars aligning for that download was that. Because, the part of how I got my moniker of the Be Great guy is in my book, The 10 Secrets to Empower Kids and Awaken the Child in You. The first secret is be great. So very much along the lines of like the kids reading their identity when they come into school is, and I still do this to this day with not only my kids, but with my three grandchildren that, well, granted, one of them is only 6 weeks old, so he doesn't get it yet, but he will. Is anytime I leave them, if I'm over visiting and I'm leaving, or they're going to school or whatever, I say be great, and their response with enthusiasm is I am. And so that again, just it makes such a huge impact. Whether it's a little thing that you can do, but it makes such an impact on them because they do start to believe it, even if they hadn't thought about it before.
Mhm. Exactly. And when you're talking about, you and all the kids piling up on top of you, um, I'm in healthcare, so, I need to be serious with my patients. They're coming in, they're asking for help, and I'm that professional adult person. But in my personal life, and I have a friend that we like to play. We like to play, and we're not goofing off like, we're not getting in trouble or anything. But I mean, we just like to, tease back and forth or just actually like play. I'm a very active person, so I like to go to the pool, I like to go out exercising, moving, and just playing. So I can be very much still like a kid. Um, but when I have to be, of course, I'm the adult. But
Mhm.
talk about that because people lose that. And I think why? Playing's so fun.
You tell right if you don't mind, I'll not so much go off on a tangent, but one of my most popular topics when I speak at a corporation are, I call it back to your future. And it's the three traits that are innate in all of us when we're kids that we've long since forgotten. But if you bring them back, they'll make you unstoppable later in life. And so the first trait is persistence, right? I said, when was the last time you saw a kid quit trying to walk? It just doesn't happen. They fall down. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they don't, but they wipe themselves off and they just keep going until they do.
Mhm.
The other one, which is probably more important as we get older, is curiosity. Okay. As a kid, we are literally at a cellular level, we are programmed to explore, to grow, right? So it's all about that perspective, right? When there's the kid who can only crawl, can only see things at this level. But how many times has your crawling baby found the keys that you lost? Right? They find the change that fell out of your pocket, and they sometimes want to put it in their mouth, and you got to stop them, right? That's why you got to keep an eye on them, right? But as they get to the point to where they're standing and they're holding onto the coffee table, now that cup of coffee that you used to have on the coffee table that was safe from the kid, now okay, you've got to put that someplace else because they're going to reach for it. What is that, right? And then as they can walk, they can get to areas they couldn't get into before. You know, we've all seen kids climb up on the countertops to get to the cookies and stuff like that that's on top of the fridge. Sometimes they fall, sometimes they don't. But that's just them going out and exploring and being curious. Because I believe that once a person, doesn't matter their age, but once you lose curiosity, the horizons of your world fold up and become the walls of your box. And then that takes me to the third thing, which is ingenuity. Kind of talking about a box. There's a reason why kids more often than not want to play with the box that the gift came in as opposed to the gift that came in the box. Because usually that gift has a purpose, right? You can use it for like one or two things, but the box can be anything, right? Depending on the size of the box, it could be a house, it could be a boat, it could be a car. It could, you can hide in it, you can put stuff in it, it could be anything that they want it to be, right? So kids don't have to think out of the box because they haven't built the box to think out of yet. And I think that's a perfect, metaphor. And I don't even think it's a metaphor. I think it's an actual, an actual thing of why they'd rather play with the box.
Yeah,
So
and it's speaking this reminded me when my kids
yeah,
were little, we had DVDs and some people don't know what those are, but they're square rectangle things that had movies on them. And they loved just lining them up like a train and stacking them and lining
right,
them up, and they'd play with them for a long time, just those little DVD boxes.
right. Yeah, so they still have that imagination, and so I think you I think are childlike like me, saying that you like to play, and there's a difference between childlike and childish. So I
Mm-hmm.
think the longer that you can sustain, and if you can make it through your whole life, then God bless you, being childlike and having that wonder about the world and that imagination and that curiosity, because it's just going to make you a better person and get you way farther in life than being shut into whatever little box that certain people told you you belong in.
Exactly. The other thing I think about when playing and just having fun is that you're laughing. And
Yeah,
who doesn't want to be laughing and enjoying it? Just relaxes you, all of you, and you feel good when you laugh. You feel good when you
absolutely.
smile.
Yeah. All the endorphins and hormones that are released. It's yeah, happy is just the better way to be. It just simply is. It's healthy.
Exactly. So if people wanted to connect with you, find out about all your programs, at this point, I want you to say, where can they find you? And then what programs and services do you have going right now?
So you can, if to find out more about me personally, you can go to the begreatguide.com. So once again, so the begreatguide.com. So that's where all of my programs are. I said we are pre-selling them now, but they won't be starting until till January. But what we're doing is the sooner that people sign up, we're actually extending that on. So somebody who's joining now, instead of getting like the roundtable and the academy are annual things, but we're going to give them an extra 3 months at the end of it, so they're good, still going to get all that time. So that's where you can contact me to find out more about the school program. You can go to I am the number four, so I am the number four kids.com, and that's where schools, if they want the program, they can go and sign up for it. Like I said, we are still sending that to them free of charge. And that's pretty much about it. You can find my book on Amazon. Just Google Mark Papadas, uh, The 10 Secrets to Empower Kids and Awaken the Child in You, and you can find it there.
Wonderful. So now I have a personal question for you.
Okay.
What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
It's got to be my three little grandsons. They there's just something about if you want to get clinical, I'm sure there's a chemical reaction that happens in the brain and stuff like that. But when I go over to their house and they literally run to me, and I don't have a gift for them or anything like that, but they're just like, Papa, and they jump into my arms. There's nothing that beats that. And the nice thing about it is that, they said the great thing about being a grandparent is you don't have to change all the diapers and stuff like that. You just get to be the good guy all the time. And there's nothing that beats that.
There is, and I have a granddaughter, and it's the most wonderful thing. And the other thing is, you can just enjoy them. As a parent, I remember I was like, I don't want to say anxious, but you want to make sure you do everything right. I don't want to mess them
Right.
up. I don't want to
Yeah.
mess up my kids. But as a grandparent, you're like, oh, I just get to play with them. That's it.
Yeah.
So, but thank you so much for being on the podcast today and for sharing, your program and what's available and, just your wisdom about kids.
Well, I greatly appreciate it. And just, one last thing for the rest of your audience is always to remember to be great.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. And you might have answered my last question. The last question of the day is, what is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Well, be great, be happy. Just always remember that what it, people talk about the law of reciprocity, right? Or the law of attraction is that you will receive back from the world, from the universe, the what you put out into it. So the more positive you are, the more helpful you are, the more will come back to you. But don't be one of those people who's like, I couldn't possibly accept that, because then you're disrupting the flow. The flow goes everywhere, not just between you and the universe, goes between everybody in the universe. So that's one of the things that when I coach people, especially on the adult side, is don't be that block. Accept what's coming your way because it's coming your way for a reason.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.